Hello. I wanted to share the next story that I had come to me one night, and this is another channeled story, and I feel like it is a bit of a prelude to the bedtime story that I was writing called Writing a New Earth. Again, I want to acknowledge the land that I'm on. I'm on Kamilaroi country in northwest New South Wales. I feel very privileged to be here at this time. I'm quite remote, and it's quite warm, so I'm very, very blessed. And I really acknowledge the elders that have taken care of these lands for thousands of years. And I guess this story is another attempt at conveying the depth of knowledge and wisdom that's held in Indigenous cultures and people and land across the earth. So this is called The Great Forgetting. There was a time long ago when ancient ones roamed the land. They were the first people who came to earth from Skyworld to take care of the land and the creatures. They had physical human bodies, but they remained in their spiritual body too. They were much larger and lived to be many hundreds of years old. Some of the very wise ones lived up to 700 years of age. These ancient ones held universal knowledge, extremely intelligent. They maintained their connection to the sky world and were conduits to transfer this knowledge to the earth world. Their kindness and compassion was also immense. They cared for all creatures great and small. Their role was to bring ceremony and language to the earth world. Sacredness was their gift. They spoke the language of the soul, a universal knowledge that transcribed and translated all of creation. The ancient ones embodied spirits so impeccably that they did not require food or water. They were so connected to the source of all life. Some would say they were only part human and mostly spirit beings. Eating and drinking was revered for the sacred ceremony. This was the law of creation, to only take life with a sacred purpose, never for greed or want. Their way of living was peaceful for many thousands of years. They were in service to the creation and unification of the earth world. One day that all changed. Darkness entered, an entity from far away. The people had been warned of this, that there would come a time when greed would enter and threaten the peaceful existence of the ancient ones. This was a new wave of consciousness. It came on a bitterly cold wind and spoke in many languages. At first people were not concerned. Life continued on. Ceremonies continued and their connection to the sky world remained strong. But over centuries this began slowly to change. The nights became darker, the winds colder, and time began to speed up. The people began to feel hungry, and slowly they became dependent on the earth for food. They now had daily ceremonies with food and water, but their life force was beginning to fade, and so too was their lifespan. Language and ceremony remained, and eventually this way became the everyday. They continued to pass on the stories of creation, law and earth law. They continued to seek guidance from the sky world. But their knowledge and intelligence was fading. Where once every human being held universal wisdom, now only the elders remained connected. In an effort to maintain their spiritual obligation to the earth, they began creating new languages that now came from the earth. Tribes were formed, and their telepathic abilities were fading. They now relied solely on these new languages from the land and their tribal groups. This was a time of great adaptation. For now they relied entirely on the plants and water and each other for their survival. With this dependence, greed was setting in, and some people began to take outside of ceremony. Their greed led them to eat more and to take life without reverence. The more they fed this greed, the more it would take over their spirit, until eventually they lost connection with their spirit and became deaf to the messages of the sky world and the earth world. This deafness and hunger led them to a thirst for power and dominion. First they began killing and eating the animals, but this only made them hungrier. Then they began empires to force people into poverty. They began to see that control was possible if you could make the people forget their sacred gifts and ceremony. So they began killing the last of the elders that held the language of the universe. They created new languages that were based on possession and separation. But this was not enough for them. They hungered for more power and control, so they began the bloodshed. A 5,000-year-old battle, humanity entered the Dark Ages. Anyone who carried ancient law, language and ceremony was killed. The greedy had now almost succeeded in their quest for ultimate power, which was control of all things living, all people, all plants, all animals, all land. Life on earth was slipping away, and ancient knowledge and love was almost entirely lost. This was a time of mass extinction. The human lifespan had now narrowed down to a mere 7 decades. Despite all efforts for ultimate power and control, there were a few who had kept the knowledge alive. In humanity's darkest hour, these few shone through, and this would be enough to end the time of the great forgetting, to enter into a new era of the great remembering, where humanity would once again return to ancient law to continue life on earth. Thank you for listening, and this story helped me to make sense of my current environment, but also of what's happening around the world. And it's kind of a story that I can find some solitude and peace in, a bigger picture perspective. So I hope that you've received it in whatever way you needed to receive it. And blessings for your day, year, life.